Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
But under the Trump administration, we live by the motto, promises made, promises kept. I made that promise. And there is no more solemn pledge than a promise to America's veterans. The veterans are incredible people. So many people in this room. Unfortunately, with crooked Joe Biden in the White House, our veterans are once again being backstabbed and betrayed by their government. Crooked Joe gutted our historic VA reforms and fought to reinstate thousands and thousands, as I just said, of fired, horrible employees. These are horrible employees that when we terminated them, we said, get out of here, and they got out, but now they have a little bit of a lobby going, and they even want back pay. They treated our veterans badly, and it looks like it's going to cost up to $200 million in back pay for people that were treating our veterans badly. But instead of wasting $200 million on the worst VA employees, and when I say bad, they're bad, when I'm president, I'll ask Congress to take up every penny of that money and add some to it, because we're going to build in your great state a brand new, beautiful VA hospital right here in New Hampshire. We're going to build the most beautiful hospital.
Trump 47's Veterans and Military Family Coalition is activated. Welcome to Truth Thursday on the Rob Maness Show live here on Worldview Tube and X Spaces simulcast. Well, you heard it. President Donald J. Trump announced his Veterans and Military Families for Trump coalition just before Memorial Day, and it's a coalition with over 175 endorsements from decorated veterans, including yours truly, Gold Stars families, and heroes who love our country. He said this, and every Memorial Day we honor and pay tribute to those patriots of service who have died. This somber day of remembrance should also inspire us to reflect and be grateful for those of service who remain and those still serving today while risking everything to defend our great nation. The coalition's message continued: Veterans and Military Families for Trump are unified around our support for President Trump as a leader, fighting to ensure that the sacrifices of our vets and their families are honored and never forgotten. Unlike the weak Joe Biden, President Trump has consistently proven he cares deeply about the unbelievable sacrifices made by our nation's veterans and their wonderful families. While Joe Biden looks at his watch during the dignified transfer of our fallen heroes, President Trump salutes the ongoing service and ultimate sacrifice this community makes every day to protect our states and our country. This coalition is an incredible opportunity for our heroes and their families to help Donald J. Trump finish the job he began during his first term as our nation's commander-in-chief, securing the blessings of freedom for those who selflessly risk their lives to defend it. Well, my guest today is the executive director of the coalition, retired Marine Gunnery Sergeant Jessie Jane Duff, serving in the U.S. Marine Corps on active duty for 20 years. Jessie retired as a gunnery sergeant. Throughout her career, which spanned multiple assignments in the States and overseas, she provided logistical and training support to combat arms and wing units. Jessie currently serves as an ambassador to the America First Policy Institute, is a Newsmax analyst, and served on President Trump's 2020 campaign as co-chair of his Veterans for Trump Advisory Board. Gunny Duff, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's been too long.
Hey, it's so good to see you, Colonel. I'm excited to be here, especially in the capacity, the brand new capacity of Executive Director for Veterans for Trump, or I'm sorry, Veterans and Families Coalition. It's a wonderful opportunity for our veterans to actually get involved and engaged, and I encourage all of them. If you haven't signed up for the coalition, you can find it at veterans.donaldjtrump.com. That's veterans.donaldjtrump.com, and just fill it out, and essentially it puts you into our system as being a veteran. And when we are active in your state or your locality, we can basically ensure that you are informed and enabled to assist, participate, and be the active person that you want to be to support this president in winning the White House in 2024, November 5th. Veterans often have taken their own selves for granted. Many of them have not shown up to even vote. We have a very high amount of people of low turnout. And honestly, despite all the arguments of 2020, had all of the people who supported Donald Trump shown up and voted, we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in right now. So we have to be too big to rig. And I love that phrase because veterans are the backbone of what we have to get this vote out there. It's probably the most important coalition, along with the Gun Owners of America coalition, because they both cover such a huge audience and they support this country.
Yeah, and it's a huge number of folks that didn't vote and that don't normally vote too. So this program is designed to as outreach to those. Who made up this group of these 175 endorsers? I already named myself. I'm honored to get the opportunity to have my name on that list. But who are some of the other folks, Genny?
It's a plethora of veterans. We have everybody that are, from Vietnam veterans all the way up to our current conflicts. People who had served, maybe they're during the peaceful years of the Reagan era, people who don't necessarily have combat background. We have Gold Star families. The Abbey Gate parents are on there. Tragically, it's a list they probably shouldn't want to be on. This is not a list for the Gold Star families to desire to be on. That is one list that nobody wants to be on. But keep in mind, Joe Biden never even spoke to any of those parents who had lost their child, son or daughter, on that fateful day when Afghanistan collapse happened. And 11 of them were United States Marines, one Navy corpsman, and one soldier. And mind you, I believe there were only two that had experience in Afghanistan of that death toll. One was the soldier, and one was the Marine Corps staff sergeant. Which goes to show you that they didn't send the infantry in there to ensure that there was a safe evacuation. They sent many of those Marines were headquarters Marines and non-combatant experience. So it was a death toll that should have never, ever happened. We also can't forget that we had the 3 National Guardsmen that were recently killed in Jordan. The president's never said their names either. In fact, he didn't even mention them at his State of the Union. The Houthi rebels, for those of you that weren't necessarily watching the news, which I doubt any of your listeners don't watch the news, but the Houthi rebels, during this whole escapade and debacle with Israel, Houthi rebels were starting to attack the ships in the Red Sea, starting to obstruct the shipping lanes. They were these are Iranian-backed Houthi rebels, mind you. And sure enough, one of the drones hit our military installation. Now, it wasn't the first. We had been getting hit for over 50 days in a row. And it wasn't until somebody got killed that the United States finally responded to these Houthi rebels that were ensuring that the Iranian-backed drone killed our service members, along with wounding and injuring so many. So being a Gold Star parent is something that we would hope would one day be in the past, but sadly and tragically, particularly under this administration, they are in the present. And prior to the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan, there had been no U.S. service member killed in Afghanistan for probably almost 1.5 years, as I recall. It was quite a significant period of time because President Trump told the Taliban what would happen if one more American was killed, and made them very confident that he would react on that promise. So we have a lot of wonderful veterans that are on there, like such as yourself, several named generals that we all know, and colonels like you, and then people like me that are kind of sort of known, and then many others that show that the blood of the military, the lifeblood, your enlisted man or woman, your young staff and COs and officers. Those are the ones that are also on this endorsement. So we're thrilled about that. But I challenge all of your listeners, if you're a military veteran or military family, please sign up at veterans.donaldjtrump.com and get your name in there, because this coalition has to be powerful and you'll stay in the loop with the campaign. We're excited because there are 22.5 million veterans out there. That's an enormous amount of voice that we have, and we're a unified group of people overall. We all love this country. And for those that are not voting, it's going to be our job as veterans to get them out there to vote.
Yeah, and it's a huge number when you combine it, especially with groups that own guns like hunters. I was surprised to find out that the hunting population in the United States doesn't traditionally go vote right now.
Isn't that
Well, we need to get them out to vote, and the veterans that are listening to this, go sign up and go talk to your neighbor who goes hunting deer with you that may not be a veteran, and get them registered to vote and sign up at donaldjtrump.com to do something. I'm a member of the Trump Talk team. I lead a little band of veterans here in Mississippi that we do phone calling through Trump Talk every Friday when they're active. And that New Hampshire clip, the reason I showed it, one of the reasons is so I can talk about this, is that we veterans, we made over 1,000 phone calls into New Hampshire that weekend that they were running that primary and that election there. And it was that important because, his opposition was starting to get a little traction. He needed to make a good showing. So, and speaking of flooding the zone, Gunny, you're exactly right. We've got to flood the zone, just like we would overwhelm an enemy on when taking an objective with a military war plan. We've got to overwhelm this system so the fraud doesn't really matter. Even though we know it'll be there, we can make it happen to where it's not a factor, right?
It's really important. I mean, many people take it for granted when they look at a poll and they see somebody's going to surge or be ahead, that their vote won't count. But you get a couple hundred people that are thinking like that, and you lose elections. So every vote does count, and it is important. I can't recap what happened in 2020, but I do know people like Cleta Mitchell. She runs a website called whoscounting.us. Cleta Mitchell is a phenomenal attorney, and she was on the call when Donald Trump had called the Secretary of State down there in Georgia, and his comments were taken very much out of context. That the left-wing media tries to say he wanted them to go create votes. That wasn't it. He said find the votes, because they had multiple lists. I can't remember the number. She told me it was anywhere between 10 and 15 lists of negligent registered voters, such as people who didn't have home addresses, or multiple registrations on empty lots, or people that were double registered in 2 states or different counties, and essentially were not legitimate voters. And they didn't clean up their voter rosters down there in Georgia. So consequently, you were able to have a lot of these excessive ballots get cast that were being counted. Now, we all know in 2020 that if you were doing a mail-in ballot, there's no way anybody was getting their signature verified, because an absentee ballot is different than a mail-in ballot. An absentee, you have to sign to request it, and they verify it's you when it's upon receipt. But these mail-ins, what a joke that was. So they definitely had an advantage to handicap the system, or rig the system, so to speak. And Cleta Mitchell has pushed aggressively. Every week I'm on a call with her. And she has teams all over the United States, particularly in those battleground states. And you don't hear about these things in the news. That's how I would say, go to her website, whoscounting.us, and you're going to see all of her podcasts, all of the work they've done. They've cleaned up rosters in multiple states. They've restricted voting in other states. Now, not limiting voting, but ensuring that they're following the proper protocols so that we don't have people casting their ballot 2 days after the election, or ballots being counted that aren't postmarked, or ballots that, mysteriously show up on 3 days later. We have to clean that up. And so the states are responsible for that. I believe correct me, I can't remember which particular amendment is, but you cannot regulate the states and the elections, but the federal government can regulate federal elections. So tightening up these states' voter laws was critical. And I'm very optimistic that we're not going to have a repeat in 2024. Will there be some fraud? Of course, because, you know, when power is never given up easily. Power is something that is usually given away with blood, sweat, and tears. You know, nobody wants to give up their power. And you can tell by the way the Democrats are slandering this man, going after him left and right with the multiple legal cases. They're trying to keep him jumbled. They overplayed their hand. He's only rising in the polls. The average man or woman who's experienced some type of legal situation where they ended up either losing their home, losing their paychecks, losing resources, losing friends, losing family members, understand that the justice system is not always fair. And to watch a man who's a billionaire go through this, they're realizing, wow, this is how much they want to hang on to that power, that they will try any method to either bankrupt him, get him off the ballots, which they failed at in several states, try to censor him, which they're trying to do with those gag orders, or essentially discourage him to a point where he just leaves. Well, they're not going to discourage Donald Trump. He didn't get to where he is by being a wuss and quitting. He's the type of guy that you and I would have loved in the battlefield, because he's the man that you know is going to come through, who believes in his mission, and he's going to stick to it. Hell or high water, he's going to follow through. And that to me is intestinal fortitude, which you don't often see with anybody who's running for president of the United States.
And that's how you build very loyal team members and everything. And we're not going to quit either. I mean, he's got a veterans and coalition team that is never going to quit, because we have the same characteristics. Well, we got to take a commercial break. When we come back, Genny, I want to give you a chance to talk about veteran policy. The 45th president's administration gave us some great things like community care. So I want to get a little preview of what we can expect from Trump 47. We'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show with the executive director of the Trump campaign's new Veterans and Military Families Coalition.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
Has spent nearly $1 billion to house illegal aliens and foreign migrants in expensive luxury hotels, courtesy of you, the American taxpayer, and they want to spend billions and billions more. In many states, we're running out of hotel space because the rooms are all booked up with illegal aliens living in a very large way on the American taxpayer's dime. Meanwhile, we have 33,000 veterans in this country who are homeless and living very poorly, I might add, and it's a shame. They're living in filth and squalor on our streets. Nobody is doing a thing for them. We helped them a lot during my 4 years, and it's all been dropped. Everything we did for our veterans has been dropped. It's a disgrace. Joe Biden puts illegal aliens before homeless veterans, and we cannot let this happen any longer. The American veteran is one of our greats. These are great, great people. We have to take care of them. When I am reelected, this national scandal will end. On day one, I will sign an executive order to cut off Joe Biden's massive spigot of funding for shelter and transport of illegal aliens and redirect a portion of those savings, a very large portion, I might add, to provide shelter and treatment for homeless American veterans. I will make it a personal mission to totally eradicate veterans' homelessness in America by the end of next term. You'll see a big difference, just like you did at the VA, just like you did with, frankly, everything we touched. The border was the best border we've ever had. We were energy independent. We were soon going to be energy dominant. Our country was doing great. We had no inflation. We had the best economy in history. We're going to take care of our veterans. If you have served this nation in uniform, the Trump administration will never betray you as Joe Biden and the radical left Democrats have done. They have truly betrayed you. Anybody voting for a Democrat is very foolish, very, very foolish. We certainly will not be putting illegal alien lawbreakers up in ultimate luxury while American veterans lay shivering on the sidewalks below. Unlike Biden, our loyalty will not be to illegal aliens who have violated our borders and come into our country illegally. They've trampled our sovereignty. It will be to the brave men and women who enlisted their lives to defend our borders and to protect our sovereignty. Thank you very much. We're going to take care of our veterans.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show on Worldview Tube. We're live on our X Spaces simulcast, and our guest today is the executive director of the Trump 47 campaign's Veterans and Military Families Coalition that just was announced over Memorial Day weekend. It's retired Marine Gunnery Sergeant Jessie Jane Duff. You've seen her on Newsmax as an analyst and has been around for a while talking policy. And Jessie, I wanted to highlight that clip there. That's one of the agenda items that the president's team has put out. And he really comes from the heart on this and really makes the point about how it is his love for Americans and the Americans and their families who have served that really drives him. And the sincerity is plain to see. He wears it on his sleeve. And it just blows me away because we don't have very many presidents of the United States in the last, 40 or 50 years that have been able to say things and then go implement a policy like he did with community care in the VA. I'm still using the community care that we're able to use still from the Trump administration.
Yeah, many veterans, depending upon who your audience is, some may not be familiar with, but the VA had this policy that if you were within 50 miles of a veteran's healthcare facility, you had to use it in order to get your healthcare, which, if you rated the care, that's where you had to go. Well, this would be sometimes 50 miles as a crow flies, not as you would drive there. So we all know that 50 miles by the way a crow flies may turn into be 100 miles or, a long drive going around mountains or however else you need to get there. And it really became such a difficult struggle. I've been a part of a group called Concerned Vets for America way back during the Obama administration. And this was really difficult. We could not seem to get anyone to start hearing what we were saying. And finally, under President Trump, he was able to do the VA Accountability Act and essentially, or it's VA Choice, I'm sorry. And he was able to get legislation passed or policy passed that allowed veterans, we didn't need legislation, but get the policies changed within the VA that these vets could utilize outside care. And the VA kicked and screamed over this because keep in mind, everything's about money. Well, the Veterans Administration is the second largest funded administration of all of them, next to DOD. DOD is number one, then the VA. So whenever I hear people say, well, just, they need more money, they need more resources, which is, a 12-year-old mindset. Well, teachers aren't being paid enough, or this isn't happening. Well, look at where your money is already going and find out where your potholes are. So these professionals at the VA that got fired under President Trump were part of the scandals that did not get resolved under President Obama. And what happened was they had these wait lists. There's many scandals, by the way. One of the biggest ones, though, was the wait list. So a vet goes in there and gets on a wait list to get his appointment, his or her appointment, within 30 days. Well, these SES, senior executive service people, were actually teaching these administrators at the hospitals to run a wait list 30 days and then run it again as a fresh list, so that nobody ever was in the 60-day, 90-day plus arena to get an appointment. And they were getting bonuses. They were actually gaming the system to get bonuses for their employment. And many of these that kind of got caught in the scandals had been transferred from hospital to hospital, basically profiting off of the very job that they had. And this one woman, I can't remember her name, we finally were able to get her fired, but they didn't get her on the indiscretions of these wait lists. They got her on a falsifying a travel claim that she had made, where she was getting reimbursed for it. You know, so this is like kind of, you can't get Al Capone for murder, but you're going to get him on tax evasion. But the VA and those civil service jobs really protects these government employees so that they really are difficult to get rid of when they're bad actors. And President Trump figured out a way to do it. Well, here comes Joe Biden and reinstates these fools. So that was one of them. One of the second ones that I thought was enormous because it impacted people like me. When I came off of active duty, although I had gotten my bachelor's degree, I had not been able to pursue further education. And he allowed our GI Bills to be endless. It was the GI Bill I fell under was going to expire at the 10-year mark, and he allowed it to be endless. So if I decide, in a few years, if I want to go back and get my master's or whatever other degree training that I want to get, I still have that resource. But the biggest accomplishment, though, again, was that VA. And I was on Newsmax with a liberal who tried saying, oh, it's Joe Biden that got rid of finally got legislation passed or got the policies changed so that people who were suffering from the burn pits was being recognized, for healthcare purposes. And I thought in my head, yeah, but meanwhile, he reinstated every con artist that worked at the VA who was profiting off of the VA. So it's like, one abolishes the other. But veterans definitely knew that he cared. He set up that suicide hotline that ensured that they were actually getting adequate resources, because 22 a day was one too many committing suicide. I mean, we already have a mental health crisis in this country, but ensuring that we had an active suicide hotline, whereas under, again, the Obama administration, often people called that quote unquote hotline and were put on hold. There were reports of this where they just didn't have the resources going into it that they should. So those are just three examples of how it improved it for veterans.
Absolutely. Well, we've got a live audience, and I do take questions from her every once in a while. So I want to go, and we've got a hand up over there. Bill, Elliott, and Drax are our hosts in the simulcast of the X Spaces. Bill, I see you got a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to briefly say I watched my father benefit from the change Trump made. And it was just immediate. But I know, Gunny, you were on Newsmax talking about the Trump trial and what the impact would be if he was convicted.
What you just did where I lost my cool with the lefty, or was it yesterday?
I think it says it's 2:30 today, so I think it was just airing today. But I missed it, so I wanted to hear what some of your answers were.
Wait, but I want to clarify, was that today's show where I got into the argument with the lefty?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, it was a bloodbath. There was a lefty that came on and tried to give this convincing argument on why Trump. So first of all, the question was, if Trump is found guilty, is it going to impact him winning the White House? So I got to go first, and I gave a very logical, round, sound answer. We all know that this has no impact upon it. So the lefty comes along, and he definitely just wants to try to degrade everything about Trump. And I shouldn't let myself get into defensive posture, but, I have a tendency, having been a Marine, to want to reach over and chokehold somebody who's lying to me. And so on the air, I was pretty much doing a proverbial chokehold, because he's making false statements. And that's one thing that I just cannot really tolerate. And he essentially goes, well, there was a CBS poll that says, the majority of Americans believe he's guilty. And I thought, but you're missing the question. We've already decided if he's found guilty, because yet we all know that this whole trial is corrupt. So let's just get in that frame of mind. He's still going to win. So he says, well, So he tries to invalidate everything I said. I said, first of all, Americans are sick of this. We're looking at the economy and we see that, many people are taking payday loans. It's on record highs, people trying to sustain themselves right now. Families are frustrated because crime-ridden New York City is not resolving those issues and putting all their resources into this. We know that the White House has influenced this trial by having Colangelo, the attorney that came up from the Department of Justice, to go up there and work with Alvin Bragg for one sole purpose. This never happens where you have a DOJ attorney who was trying to get Trump to go now up there to try to get Trump. We know that this is all political to a point that Americans don't care about this. The weaponization of the judicial system only tells them that Joe Biden doesn't care about them. That was kind of like, in a nutshell, my opening. So here comes Lefty, and I gave him all the time in the world to say what he needed to say, even though 90% of it was just making my head explode. And then I came back with my rebuttal. I didn't get 10 words out before he starts trying to interrupt me. And oh boy, I started to lose it. I was like, do not interrupt me. Do not interrupt me. I said, you need to sit there with your mouth shut and listen. I said, you already sat here and listened to your filibuster. And I mean, the host literally had to tell him to be quiet because he didn't let up. He just kept trying to come back. But he had come up with these false arguments that the record low unemployment for Black Americans, which in fact, Donald Trump had record low unemployment across the board, not just African Americans, Latinos, veterans, everybody. Our post 9/11 veterans finally got below 4%. It was the first time. It never happened under the Obama administration. Biden administration, I might add. Not only that, Obama used to say he couldn't get below 4%. This is the new norm. Well, President Trump got it below 3%. So I start giving the numbers, and this guy keeps cutting me off. And he even tried to suggest that, make it no mistake. And he admitted that the African Americans are supporting Joe Biden at 60%, so he's still going to win. I shot back. It used to be 80%. I said, we had 35,000 people show up in Bronx, New York, when Joe Biden goes to Philly and could only get 20 people in a room. I said, you know that he cannot sustain himself without that 20%. And man, we were just on fire at that point. I said, you are lying. He tried to bring up the, the Central Park, the guys that were alleged to have raped in Central Park. He brings that up. And I said, shut up. They had pled guilty and the prosecutor was already after them. I said, that's a false argument and you are lying. And so it went back and forth. Man, when I opened up my Twitter, I rarely get a lot of reactions when I'm on Newsmax, but let me tell you, I must have had 15 tweets saying, amen, you shut him down. You called him a liar. I told him to shut his little mouth. Oh my God, I'm probably going to go to hell for that one. But anyway, I mean, I was livid that you're repainting the narrative that Donald Trump's a racist. And when he said that, I flipped back at him. I said, oh, like Joe Biden, who you ain't black if you, and this happens to be a black opponent, Democrat I was on with. I said, oh, but you ain't black if you vote for Donald Trump, which is an insult to every African American out there. Woo! Yeah. By the time I got off the air, I thought I ruined the segment, because if you know anything about live television, you should not be talking over each other, particularly when you're on Skype or Zoom. They can intermittently cut off. So I don't even know how it translated on live television, but apparently it went pretty good. I was thinking they're never going to call me back.
That's why you're in charge of this coalition too, because we need a gunnery sergeant like Jesse Jane Duff. We got to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about the Gold Star family's inclusion in this coalition, because I think there's a great opportunity there from a policy perspective. And thank goodness we have fighters like Gunny Duff on this team. We'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show.
I'm excited to announce we're having a huge MyPillow spring sale, and here's a few examples. Buy one of our MyPillow 2.0s, you get another MyPillow 2.0 absolutely free. Made with cooling technology, the best pillow ever just got even better. And this just in, 9 brand new colors and styles of our Percale bed sheets. They're made with the finest long staple cotton, and now you can save 50% or more. That's as low as $24.98. And for the first time this year, I'm bringing you our My Slippers and Sandals for as low as $25 a pair. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get your MyPillow 2.0s. Buy one, get one free. Percale sheets as low as $24.98. My slippers and sandals as low as $25 a pair. And for a limited time, when you order $75 or more, your entire order ships absolutely free.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview.
Listen, I want to tell you a story, a quick story about the man, the leader, the commander-in-chief that is Donald J. Trump. We all remember, the whole world remembers, and history will never forget, the disgraceful debacle, the stain that was the withdrawal from Afghanistan under Joe Biden. And you know who remembers it every day that they wake up? The 13 new Gold Star families that lost their sons and daughters and were put in an impossible situation. Well, we recently had them in for a hearing in Congress. The Republicans did. They still haven't gotten their loved ones' effects. Some of them got the cell phones, but their SIM cards were removed. They're getting conflicting stories on what happened, those final moments. Well, this won't surprise you. None of them, not one of them, could get a meeting with Joe Biden. He won't even say their names. Has not said their names in 3 years. So you know what we did? We called up President Trump. He was not going to drive out of the park up at Bedminster, of course. We called up President Trump. He said, Michael, get him up here. Get him up here. God bless this man. He was supposed to spend an hour with him. He ended up seeing him one-on-one. He heard their stories. He promised when he gets back into office, he is going to release all the tapes, all the footage, all the drones. He is going to make them whole. And you know what? By the end of the night, he was scheduled to spend an hour. The man's kind of busy. He spends 5 hours with him. He takes him to dinner. By the end of the night, these moms are crying. They're laughing. They're dancing with their husbands. 3 of the moms came up to me afterwards, and my wife Julia, and said, this is the best thing that happened to me since I lost my son. That is, you'll never see that on the mainstream media. You'll never see that. They'll never show that side of Donald Trump, but we know, you know, this is the commander-in-chief that we need.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show, live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. And my guest today is the executive director of Trump 47's Veterans for Trump and Military Families Coalition, Gunnery Sergeant, retired U.S. Marine Corps, Jesse Jane Duff. And Gunny, I wanted to show that clip because I don't know what the president's thinking right now from a policy perspective, but I sure would hope that we'll see a policy, something along the lines of maybe a Gold Star Families Bill of Rights, or what to expect, direction to the Department of Defense and the Veterans Affairs Department, a list of things, because Congressman Walzer nailed it. I mean, we need to protect these families and ensure they're able to get what they're supposed to get and what they're entitled to, right?
Yeah, I'm going to say something that may sound a little controversial, but you can't legislate kindness and you can't legislate morality. Look at what Joe Biden did as soon as he walked into the White House. He redid just about every executive order, undid every executive order by President Trump. So I don't think you would need legislation under President Trump because he does the right thing. It's the people like Joe Biden that need the legislation, but what are they going to do? Or if it's not even legislation, policy. Joe Biden is bragging that the Supreme Court said he cannot pay back these student loans, which is basically taxpayers paying for the loans, but he's doing it anyway. So, you know, you get somebody in the White House that wants to disregard. And if anything, we've learned in the last, year with all the weaponization of the legal system and going against President Trump, they have a way of doing what is taking something that should be simple and decent and turning it into something controversial. The illegal immigration, they try to turn it into a humanitarian issue, like we have to give them food and housing instead of cutting off the sucking chest wound that's going on at the border. Like they're going to try to sustain our bleeding versus stopping the bleeding. You know, and as a Marine, you know, we learned the stages, the steps for life. You know, start the breathing, stop the bleeding, treat for shock. But no, they don't know how to stop the bleeding. So I agree. But is that going to matter to the next jerkhead that gets in the White House that doesn't care about the veterans or the Gold Star families because they caused the death and the tragedy? Department of Defense I've never heard of the Department of Defense not doing what they were supposed to do for families. In fact, usually every Marine I know that had died in a combatant zone is given literally a Marine, usually it's a female spouse, a Marine works for her for an entire year till she gets herself together again. You know, make sure that the lawn is mowed, make sure the kids are taken to school, make sure that they get the bills paid. I don't remember the title that they're given, but they have an army of support, in this case, Marines, to ensure that they are not abandoned. So for the commander-in-chief to do what this is, I would dare to say this is exclusively Joe Biden, because we didn't see that under George Bush. We could argue over whether the wars were valid or not, but George Bush did honor the fallen. I dare to say that Barack Obama did honor the fallen. What Joe Biden has done is absolutely sickening and reprehensible, and it should have never, ever happened. And if you got to legislate morality and kindness and attention to detail like that, shame on you and shame on the people that were working for you, that nobody is telling Joe Biden what he should have done. Because Joe Biden obviously has applesauce for a brain. I say that just as honestly as possible. We know that he's not coherent, but somebody in that White House knows right from wrong. But meanwhile, he's got people as his national security advisors that are literally Palestinians that have been in Georgetown University, that were radicals going against Israel, that actually work on his national security team. So that tells you the mindset that these people have. There is no humanity. They support terrorism. They support Iran. They support anything that's anti-American, because Joe Biden doesn't know what American is anymore. He really doesn't. This is not the same Joe Biden from 50 years ago. Not that he was ever the type of person I would vote for. He's always been a liar. He's always made up stories. He's always exaggerated his resume. But at the same time, he wasn't this man. He knew Iran was bad decades ago. He knew that, he knew gas prices shouldn't go up. He supported stopping illegal immigration. I think every Democrat did. We've got massive video footage of Bill Clinton and Barack Obama speaking out against illegal immigration. What has shifted isn't necessarily that Joe Biden's incompetent, but his team and staff that are regulating him and managing him, that are controlling him, are the far leftists that we fear the most because they degrade this republic.
Yeah, and they chose people that are callous. I think that's one of the things that's going on in the Department of Defense, and President Trump, this time around, he learned a lot of things in his first administration. He will choose people, like the next Secretary of Defense has to go in and clean out this approach, find out whoever it was that didn't take care of these families and fire them. And then reorient the policy of whatever department of it is. And I think the president's he's going to appoint men and women like that, that are going to go in with the, literally, not literally, but figuratively, with guns blazing, fire everybody that needs to be fired, reestablish new policy and say, look, you're not going to do this kind of stuff anymore. Heck, I mean, Joe Biden's got a chief of staff in the Undersecretary of Defense for Special Operations office that's an Iranian agent. And it's known. She's still there. Still there. Yeah.
Still clear. Like they've turned a blind eye to this. They're enabling the Muslim Brotherhood to get the hold that it has. I'm sorry, here it is, 2024. Who thought we'd be talking terrorism back after 9/11 and the country united against it? Well, it had a comeback. It's had a comeback. And it's because these Democratic leaders, the Hamas Democrats, have been pushing this White House on an astronomical level. And that's why Joe Biden is going to legitimately actually lose this election, because Americans do not want this. They do not want people that cannot unite. They do not want to have to worry about their sons or daughters going on active duty in the military to fight something that Joe Biden could have prevented before we even got into an arena. You know, the fact that we are struggling to recruit, we're struggling to recruit is a statement of the lack of confidence they have in this leadership. Because when you love your country and you feel that the cause is worthy, recruitment has never been easy. I was a recruiter, but it shouldn't be where every branch of service, Air Force included, is not making their numbers. In fact, the only branch that made its numbers were the Marines. Some people say, well, they're the smaller branch. Well, guess what? We also have some of the most extreme challenges for people to want to be a United States Marine. And the reason the Marines are generally successful at recruiting is we use a different style of method than most other branches. We don't recruit for job security. We basically are very blunt. You want to wear this uniform? This is the hardship you're going to endure to earn it. And people eat that up, but it's a very unique personality that is drawn to that. But with that said, the Marines struggled, and I don't know that they're going to make it this year. And I shouldn't read that every branch of service is missing their mission or barely getting their mission, as the Marines barely did by the hair of their chinny chin chin, because then you start lowering the quality. Then you're going to start taking people that couldn't finish high school. I have no disrespect for anybody who couldn't finish high school, but at least have a GED, or at least have your 2 semesters of college. I recruited kids like that, but don't have people that just now have, you got to do waivers on their police activity, drug involvement, waivers on all these other things that can infest your units. Because look, the military gives you a chance to change, but you have to want to do it. It's not going to change you. And that's why people who see this troubled kid, well, have them go in the military. I said, hell no, because we are not there to babysit the dysfunction that you allowed your son or daughter to become. That is not our job. You still have to be an honorable person to go into the military and be willing to try your best to be a better person versus somebody who's just trying to clean up aisle 9 because you've made such a disaster of your life. I tell you, as a recruiter, I saw this. The kids that I had to give the biggest waivers to enter usually became dysfunctional on active duty. I guarantee there's a trend. Yeah. The kids that didn't require waivers or minimal waivers, you got a speeding ticket, you needed a waiver. But when you started having lots of waivers, and the higher that the command had to go to get that waiver, the more trouble that kid usually was. And not saying all of them are going to collapse on you, but there's a trend there. There's a pattern there, because your values and your morals are already established long before you show up at that recruiter's door. Long before. Yep. I'm not going to drill into your head honor, courage, and commitment and integrity if it never meant anything to you in your 20 years of life. If it never meant anything to you at that point, you're just going through lip service and mimicking what I have to do. And you know what'll hurt a unit the most are the thieves and the liars. Thieves and liars. You go into a unit where you have an open squad bay and people lose their wallets. I lost my wallet. It was stolen once. And I'll tell you what, thieves and liars will destroy unit cohesion, and you can never trust your bunkmate or your combat buddy. You just can't.
And that's why we need quality recruits, and we'll get them under this coming president. And when we come back from this break, we'll see why. And we'll continue this discussion and talk about the real reason why most veterans and Gold Star families are supporting him. And he says it in this next clip. We'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show live with Gunnery Sergeant retired Jessie Jane Duff.
A lot of people are having great success with a weight management program with Bella Trim, but it's just a tool. In terms of ingredients, Chromex or chromium picolinate improves the actions of insulin, so you have better glucose management, and in addition, it promotes fat utilization. Fat utilization or fat burning is also a feature of metabolite, which are two botanicals that stimulate a switch called AMP kinase. And so you tend to burn fat, reduce belly fat or visceral fat. Who doesn't want that? Metabolite has the ability to stimulate satiety or reduce those cravings. That's really very, very important. And it does that by raising GLP-1 levels. In addition, we've addressed the microbiome by using prebiotics. Healthier microbiome, better weight management.
Before thousands were brutally killed, including Americans. Before Iran helped Hamas plan the attack, killing Americans. Before Biden gave billions of taxpayers' money to Iran. Trump played hardball with Iran. Destroyed ISIS. Kept the Middle East at peace. Kept us out of endless wars. Through strength.
History shows very plainly that evil only respects one thing: unyielding strength. When I'm back in the White House, our enemies will know if you spill a drop of American blood, we will spill a gallon of yours.
President Trump, the strength we need to make America strong again.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
And that's it right there. Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show here live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. And our guest today is the new executive director of the Veterans for Trump and Military Families Coalition of the Trump 47 campaign, retired Gunnery Sergeant Jesse Jane Duff. And Jesse, that's it right there. That's the reason why the majority of veterans and their families and these gold-starred families are supporting Donald J. Trump, because he believes what I was raised on: peace through strength. What worked under Ronald Reagan, what worked before we got into this endless war policy, what worked to bring the Soviet Union and that communism down, we have to re-implement it in order to bring down the Communist Chinese Party and the People's Republic of China that we have unfortunately helped build into an economic and military hegemon that's burgeoning on replacing the United States and our allies, which means the end of freedom. Am I wrong?
And I would do, no, you're not wrong at all. And what makes, I think, all of us very nervous is that we still have a long time till January of 2025. We don't know what this president is going to be capable of doing or not doing. We know he's emboldened Iran with billions of dollars that was sanctioned money, and they tried to say, well, it's Iran's. Why are you handing over sanctioned revenue with the number one sponsor of terrorism, state sponsor of terrorism in the world, let alone, we notice as soon as this money is released that they feel emboldened to enable the Houthi rebels to start the bombings that they were doing. Hamas gets aggressive. Hezbollah's aggressive. I don't know how old any of your listeners are, and I'm going to deny my age till I die. But in 1983, many people have probably already forgotten what happened in October of 1983. The Marine barracks were bombed, and it was bombed by Iranian-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon. Over 200 peacekeeping forces, which were Marines and a few other nations that were on the peacekeeping mission with us, died in the dead of night when a suicide bomber had run their vehicle into the Marine barracks in Lebanon. And here we are today. We're still talking about it. It's not hard to find with a quick Google search what Ronald Reagan said to the nation. He did a public address in the following January when the same Iranian-backed Hezbollah had killed Dr. Malcolm Kerr. Dr. Malcolm Kerr was an expert in Islamic and Middle Eastern affairs. He worked at American University, and he was shot in the back of the head. And Ronald Reagan went out there and spoke to the nation. And if you looked at his words, it sounds like something that should have been said, after 9/11, or something that would have been said with our recent terrorist attacks. But this was way back now in 1984. The bombing was 83. Fast forward, they killed Dr. Malcolm Kerr. He does a nationwide address. You know who Dr. Malcolm Kerr is the father of? Steve Kerr. the coach Steve Kerr, who Golden State Warriors, also was a fabulous ring-holding Chicago Bull player himself. He was 19 years old going to the University of Arizona at the time when his father was assassinated. He might have been 18. And they said that he fought kind of like with an anger. Well, of course, your dad's been assassinated. And I sit here and wonder, why is he such a liberal? Because he has to apologize for feeling that he was successful when many people that he may work with today didn't have the same opportunity as him. He has spoken out against the country. He was under also with the San Antonio Spurs under another fabulous coach. They call him the Silver Fox. Can't think of his first name right now. I know all your listeners are thinking I'm stupid. I used to follow basketball quite closely. But Dr. Malcolm Kerr got Ronald Reagan to come to the country and talk about the threat of terrorism and where we should not be living in this fear. And we're just doing rinse and repeat. It's the same problem over and over and over again because we don't have the strong leadership that's suppressing it the way it should be. And under Donald Trump, and I would reach out to all the Arab Americans who came here and fled countries that were killing people that were Jews and Christians and Muslims living together, because under the Sharia law, they were executing Muslims too, came here to be free. And regardless of how you feel about Palestinians and Israelis, and you want to, under Donald Trump, this would not be happening. October 7th would not have happened. The Abraham Accords, because of the Abraham Accords, Jordan, Egypt, one other country, UAE, all helped Israel when the barrage of fire came upon them from Iran. They got actively involved. And that was because of Donald Trump, not Joe Biden. Because of that, the Abraham Accords, they assisted Israel in defending itself. That was unheard of before. So whether you're Arab, Jew, or Christian, do you want a world with peace and we have resolution, or where we go and assassinate and kill, and then the other side defends itself, and then we have this, they're committing genocide rhetoric? Whether you agree with what is being said on either side, we shouldn't have even been having this conversation. There was peace in the Middle East under President Donald J. Trump, and now we're seeing chaos, and we're at each other's throats again. And this is tragic because all of those fears that Americans felt after 9/11 and a lot of the prejudices that they felt, that they pretty much have decided, okay, there's a difference between, fear of terrorism versus somebody because of their religion. Well, guess what? That's only invigorating a lot of that hatred and paralyzing this country again. It's almost as if they want us divided. And I dare to say
absolutely.
That might be part of the plan.
And I would say to people like Mr. Kerr, when we talk about and realize what happened just a week and a half ago, where the Special Operations Forces colonel caught 2 Chechens on his property, casing his family, casing him possibly for an assassination, just like Mr. Kerr's dad experienced. That is right here at home, Jesse. We shouldn't be facing the specter except for Joe Biden's open border policies and his weak and feckless national security policy. The whole world is on fire, and now it's coming here to home, because that's just one incident out of hundreds that folks are now starting to talk about that are in the know, like the Navy admiral that said he's getting 2 to 3 attempts a week to penetrate installation security at bases all around the country, just in the Navy. So we know it's happened in the other services too. It's
These aren't
unbelievable.
just people trying to find employment. They're all young military-age men, and we know they're coming from multiple countries that have no business coming in through our southern border, and they're not being vetted. And it's shameful that the Biden administration has allowed this and has disabled all the opportunity we had to secure this border. Even like Donald Trump said, if he had just left my policies in place and gone into Delaware and laid on the beach, probably would have been fine. But no, he had to dismantle everything. And that's why we're facing this massive national security crisis that we have now.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. The hour has gone way too fast. We'll have to get you back again as we get closer to Election Day, probably multiple times, because we got to get everybody energized, Jesse. Thank you so much. People need to go to where to sign up? veterans.donaldjtrump.com and get into our coalition. We want this to be the biggest coalition ever.
I want to see 1 million veterans sign up, because then you're going to get the notifications when we go to those states, when you can assist us, the battleground states. You'll probably even be able to get those VIP seats right behind the president with the Trump, Trump, Trump signs and the Veterans for Trump sign. Get engaged, get involved, show your support, show your love.
Well, thank you very much, Gunny. We appreciate it. God bless you. Keep up the fight. I got your back. I'm here to help you whenever you need it. That's it for the Rob Maness Show here live on Worldview Tube. And we'll see you next Monday. It's More War Monday again. And retired Army Colonel John Mills is back with us. And we're talking about China's continued preparation for war, even though nobody else seems to want to acknowledge it. We know they're preparing for a war. We just don't know when. I'll see you Monday on the Rob Maness Show, Worldview Tube.